Okay, let's see. I'm showing George is with us. I'm showing Dean is with us. Get Dean
Hey,
to
there it is.
unmask. Ask him to. All right. Okay. Let me see. Let me check one thing here real fast. See, we go back over here to. Our theme this morning is going to be one that I think really is really important, primarily because it's not something I've got any experience in. And this past week, I've gone and I've done some searching for some blogs to see if there's some blogs or some video podcasts or other things that are hitting what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of uh, online evangelism, and that is something other than merely a teaching medium. Uh, I like that as a teaching medium. I'm not a real fan of podcasts, um, and I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, I'm not even a fan of some of the podcasts that everybody said is the best podcast on earth. And what would we do if we didn't have this podcast? But the kind of thing I'm talking about, it would be, or the kind of thing I'm envisioning, and I would really like to try to come up with a really good workable solution to is how to do online evangelism in the context that we often do, where we're actually sitting with someone to discuss spiritual things. But I realize the medium itself does not lend itself to that. Well, at least until Zoom came along. So, if any of you've got some experience in that, I'm really interested in getting some information from you in that regard. And so, all right, let's get this thing kicked off here. So, how'd you like that statement I made? I'm one of the older guys.
Very erudite.
I'm one of the older guys. Anyway, hey, there's someone else we know. There's someone else we know. That's Lieutenant Colonel Flem.
Yeah, I wasn't going to get shamed anymore by Brother Lawmiller.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, he has been verbally abusing me.
Has he?
Not putting my picture or my face on the screen, and now I'm like what, Medusa? You're all going to turn to stone. So
I would. Well, actually, what you just did is what Brian's been doing all morning. So with his hour.
I'm in the basement. I'm in the dungeon.
Are you?
Well, and I'm hanging out with the Air Force this morning.
I'm hearing you. All right. Let's see. Well, what happened to Dean? He was there earlier. I was fixing to say hello, Dean, but I don't see him. Anyway, well, yeah, okay. All right. Let's just go. Have any of you done any kind of online evangelism as the way we usually would talk about evangelism being done, where you've actually involved in an online conversation with someone, or via some kind of a blog, or even a Zoom meeting of some sort with a number of people at any time? Anybody? Well, there's crickets.
Okay. Well, other than the church service, no. I mean, that's not really nice.
Yeah.
We do our coffee house evangelism on Zoom.
Yeah. How's that work out? Actually, I should have. I knew that. I should have asked you about that earlier. How's that work out?
We advertise it in meetup.com, as I've said before, and we often have regular visitors,
Yeah.
and we give them a choice whether they want to study a particular topic or study a particular book. And we have been going through the book of Romans lately. And so before that, we went through the book of John. So that's about all I have when it comes to online evangelism. But it's
Right.
something that's we want to keep up even after
Right.
everything opens up and we start meeting physically again at a coffee house.
Right.
We've already talked about having a Zoom coffee house continue.
Right. Are things settling down in whatever communities or states that you guys are in? Things are kind of returning to normal here in San Bernardino County. And actually, I'm convinced the reason is because the governor's afraid he's about to be recalled. Honestly.
Normal? That's the best joke I've heard all day. We're just getting started.
Yeah. Well,
it's inching toward normal in the Chicago area.
yeah.
Hasn't really affected what we're going to do because a lot of us still have not been fully vaccinated.
Right.
Betty and I have our first shots. We'll get second round, but I just bumped into yesterday a regulation. I've asked I'm still in physical therapy because of the surgery, doing okay, but I was going to travel for the first time to this next and 2-day study that's in New York this year. And if I go, I will have to quarantine for 14 days when I get back, according to the state of Illinois. Now,
Right.
that could change by April because things are getting sort of back to normal. But I had an offer for Andy Dieselkamp and Mason Benusa are going to drive me there in a van. So all I have to do is sit up in the back seat in the captain's chair.
Yeah. What a deal.
Watch the
That's
world
not-
go by. So
That's not too bad from Indiana anyway.
I'm going to go and let the state of Illinois do whatever they're going to do.
All right.
I'm not sure they know what they're doing, but anyway, but since you asked,
Yeah. Well, good. It's good to see you again too, brother.
hey, I'm glad to be here. Good to see
Yeah.
you guys.
Let me tell you an idea that I've been working on the last couple of weeks, and I'd like to start something, and I'm thinking about calling on the name of the Lord podcast, specifically for the purpose of evangelism and doing it via Zoom. And the idea is literally to encourage people to be involved in a discussion if they're interested in spiritual matters, and make it particularly focused on evangelism, and with one person or 10 people, whatever happens to show up. And I like the idea of naming it calling on the name of the Lord, because of course that's the critical point that we address when we deal with people in the evangelical world on this question of the sinner's prayer, which I am so glad to see is losing its popularity in the thinking of many online individuals. Any of you have a feel for anything like that? Have you ever considered anything like that? Perry's idea probably comes as close to that as any we've discussed on in our group. Hello.
Well, I'll jump in. My mantra, all of the electronic stuff, even street preaching, door knocking, religious surveys, quote unquote, in my view now, I know you may disagree with me, but those are all first point of contact. I mean, the deal, in my experience, is you got to get in the door to the dining room table or somewhere where you're across the table looking at somebody eyeball to eyeball, face to face.
Right.
And without that happening, I don't think much else happening. So I'm good with whatever serves as that first point of contact, but I think it has to go beyond that. And I don't know. There probably have been people who were converted on the street after, 1 hour, one shot things. I hear stuff like that. I've never experienced it. I don't know anybody that's been converted. So, well, let me take that back. One case where one of my interns actually says he was converted over the internet, but that was many, 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 many sessions.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it requires that kind of personal relationship, F2F.
You're actually bringing up what I think is.
Argue
I
with
think.
me. Go ahead, Ray.
You're bringing up what I think is one of the critical factors here is if you're going to do anything like this, what effect do you have if ultimately you can't bring someone to the water? Well, that involves you in some way being with them. So I think that is maybe that's the reason why this medium has not really lent itself, at least in my perception, to this. But I like the idea of that initial contact. Maybe use something similar to that as kind of a subtitle to that. And anybody got thanks for that point.
Context, the rest of it ain't going to happen. So yes,
that's exactly right. If you don't get under the water, ultimately, yeah. Of course, the other factor, of course, is you got other brethren on whom you can call if you happen to be in a contact situation. Where I'm talking to somebody in Chicago, who am I going to call? Well, I'm going to call Steve, and then maybe he can make that initial contact there.
And I'll express an opinion about that because we get that kind of thing a lot. We got it in Atlanta when I lived there, and for the most part, when I've gotten a handoff from somebody else who tells me this is a really hot prospect,
that may be the key right there. Really hot prospect, yeah.
Not so much, and often what the case is, which I'm happy to work with them, whether they're hot, cold, lukewarm, or whatever. But they move up here to Chicago, and they're here 6 months before mom and dad find out they're not going to church. And then they're sicking them on and saying you need to do this Bible study, and sometimes that works. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be a blanket of negativity here, but often it's different. So
hit the wrong button there.
Argue with me, Royce. You're good at it.
Oh, you know what? I get that same thing here in California. That's just the way it is. We do get a lot of people here in Southern California, and I get a lot of people that call me and ask me to follow up on their children or whatever. And I'm like you; those often don't turn out to be very much. However, we've had situations where we've baptized.
Oh, you froze.
Despite being in California, Royce, you froze.
We had a young man. We baptized him. We baptized his wife. We baptized his dad, and his mother recently died. And she was coming and became very close to many members of the church. She recently died, and they moved to Parker, Arizona, and I passed the word on to the church there, and nobody ever made contact with them, and so they're going somewhere else. But that's the way it works, I suppose. But I absolutely, I agree with you. I don't know the type of evangelism that we're talking about is appropriate to the medium like is commonly being done. I did some research this week. I'd say research. I went to various sites. I went to YouTube, and then I followed up on some blogs to see who was doing what. I didn't find anything among our brethren doing what the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So some of you guys may have some ideas in that regard. Michael Bolton, I should have said hi, Michael. Where are you from, brother?
I had to unmute myself. Kennewick, Washington.
Oh, okay. Good to have you with us, brother.
Thank
Good to have
you.
you with us. And there's Kyle Frank. Between Kyle and
Hey, Kyle.
and Slover and I, we're the bald wonders here. I'll leave Lockmiller out because I know he's not feeling well. So
Royce,
I'm not bald.
yes, was that Steve? Go ahead.
just to follow up on what I was saying a while ago, one of the things that to me makes something a really hot prospect is, do they contact me, or is somebody else contacting me on their behalf? Which sometimes works, but I go back to, what would a first century person have done? If they, were studying with someone in Damascus and now they go to Philippi.
Right.
And they're a hot prospect. They're interested in the gospel. What would they do? Would they wait around for some Christian to come seek them out, or would they get from whoever they're studying with in Damascus, when you get to Philippi, you go see this guy?
Right.
And if they're coming to me saying, I want to study the Bible, that's a hot prospect.
Right.
That's somebody who has the interest enough to seek out the truth, seek out somebody who can teach them or who shows interest. If it's their grandma calling me, or the local preacher back in Damascus saying, hey, this guy kind of had some interest and maybe you could work with him. Okay, I'll drive 25 miles to the North Shore and seek him out. But why is that person not looking for the local group of believers?
Yeah.
To me, that's a key thing is, are they interested in the gospel, or is this somebody else trying to push them into interest in the gospel? That to me is one really critical factor. So my main point out of all that is, what would a first century Christian do when they didn't have all this technology? The technology is great. I'm glad we got it. But to me, it comes back to, if it takes technology, the church wouldn't have got out of the first century.
That's exactly right. Well, we know what Cornelius did, but of course you've got a divine prompting there also.
Give me an angel and that changes the equation. Okay.
That does for a fact, isn't it? You've got the example of the Apostle Paul too. The Acts 9 example of Paul himself making the attempt to be joined to the disciples, to become a part of them, and it's kind of interesting the result that or the effect that had upon the saints. I wonder sometimes if churches are open to some of the people that we encounter on the streets. We've never had anybody object to those that came. We've had some concerns expressed by certain members of the church, and I'm not going to tell a person because he's a sinner that he's not welcome, because somebody's afraid that if we invite them over, they're going to steal their, whatever their collectible is. So next.
I suppose there are exceptions to the rule, but I do agree with Steve. But we did have 2 baptisms here. Warren Berkeley called about a young man that was in school here that I reached out to, and then David Manning called me about a young lady that we reached out to and studied and baptized her. And she's a faithful member here with her husband. They're raising a family, but they're always excepting to the rule. But I have found for the most part that unless they contact you, you're probably not that good a prospect. But of course, we all would reach out anyway, in spite of it all. I know that the case. We have a couple here that's been visiting with us now for about 3 weeks, and he actually, it's a long story. I won't go into the story, but oddly enough, he found us through World Video Bible School, and started going to a church there that was associated with it. He and his wife were baptized, and then started thinking about, well, wait a minute, where Mom went to church, they didn't have a kitchen. And of course, at Kyle Buda, they have a kitchen. And so they visited with us. Now, Derek will tell you he's an audiovisual learner. He said, I don't read very well, but I can watch a video and learn that way. And he's pretty much taught himself a lot of things just by that medium. So anyway, for whatever it's worth.
Well, we have had that in reverse. We've had people that came to us with recognizing that there were some differences. We made contact with a family or some kids, a couple of kids out here. As I remember, I think they were siblings. They were either siblings or best friends. They were from someplace like Oklahoma. I don't remember this is about 8 or 10 years ago. And they made contact with us, but they came from the 1 cup, 1 loaf background, and were not at ease with us. And I tried to talk to them and discuss the question of generic authority with them. I know if Clinton and other brethren of that persuasion were with us, they would disagree with me on this particular subject. And they were with us for a couple of Sundays, and but then disappeared, and other subsequent efforts to contact them were not successful. And I'm not sure what they ever did. There's not a so-called 1 cup church meeting in our immediate area that I'm familiar with. There may be one somewhere that Clinton may know. That was a disappointment to us, but the reality of the matter is there are those perceptions that people have, and in spite of our best efforts and all of those things that we think we've figured out in order to answer that issue, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So
Royce, I've shared this with Clint, and it raises broader questions that are not related to evangelism, because we're talking about people that are already Christians. We had a similar incident like that. This is Atlanta, 1972, so near 50 years ago. We had a 1 cup, 1 loaf. And actually, I'm not sure they were 1 loaf, because Clinton didn't know this group, and they may have been a different flavor, but they came and started assembling with us, which to my mind indicates that they weren't that convicted about the issue in the first place, or they would not have been meeting with us.
right.
But I met with drove 40 miles down in the country to meet with the 1 cup preacher down there, where they started going to church. I think because somebody back home in Texas called them and said, get out of that apostate church in Atlanta and go seek out the true church down there.
Right.
My offer to the 1 cup preacher was, and to this couple, if they want to drive 40 miles to go to church because of their conscience sake, God bless them. That's a strong conscience. But would they assemble with us if I could talk the brethren in Atlanta into, at least temporarily, while we studied this issue for a while, suspending multiple containers?
Right.
Now, that would have been a really hard sell, I think, as most of you know. I'm not sure I could have pulled it off.
Right.
But I floated the proposal, and of course, it got shot down by the brethren down there saying, no, that's not good enough. You'd have to repent of your false teaching and your false doctrine and so forth and so on. Well, that wasn't going to sell with me, much less the brethren. And I'm like, have you read Romans 14 lately? But it does raise all kinds of interesting issues about how far would we go in a local congregation to accommodate either a brother with conscience scruples, or let's put it back in the evangelism, if it was something that we were doing that we defended or justified as a matter of expedience, and it was somehow an impediment to evangelism, or somebody we were trying to study and convert had a problem with that.
Right.
Would we give up our expedient?
Right. Yeah.
I'll just, throw that
It's
up
a,
against the wall and see.
you know, and you know what? The rattle of the matter is that's a pretty valid argument. If indeed it is an expedient, then what does the Lord say about expedience? And are you willing to suspend your expedience for the faith of another? Fundamental biblical principle. So, no, go ahead.
Somebody else talk about that. I'm interested in what does the screen think?
Yeah. They don't think much, do they?
They ain't saying much.
Yeah. Well, what
Go, Perry. I know you're good for it.
I'm always ready to open my mouth and stick
All
my
right.
foot in.
Hear it.
keep on talking, brother. You know what we think of you.
We actually was trying to work with another congregation that was institutional, trying to merge the two and trying to work through, okay, what could we, give up? What could we, what could they give up? And, when it comes to evangelism, there's, I guess the biggest difference is what do you use to appeal or to attract those that are evangelism. There's a institutional congregation near us that has a church booth where we often have a church booth, and they have a drawing for a free boombox.
Right.
I have no idea what the attraction of that is from the gospel perspective, but that's, for the sake of unity, would I be willing to do that? I'd have to think about it,
Well, let's hear the other side of it.
Yeah,
Anybody on the other side of that discussion?
other side of what discussion?
Is there anybody on the other side of that discussion? Someone who would use something similar to that?
Okay.
I'm, and wants to throw out the idea. Would there be an occasion to work together? Did you make any attempt to make contact with them at a brotherly basis, on a brotherly basis, or did you see that as an impediment to any sense of connection or fellowship with them whatsoever?
No, I've visited their church. They've never visited ours, but I've visited there. I make sure I go down to their booth. They make sure that they come up to our booth. There's another preacher that comes from a institutional congregation that's about 30 minutes away. I've invited him to join us on our Saturday flea market booth because when it comes to evangelism, I'll work with somebody or basically anybody that's going to teach them the truth about who Jesus is and what to do to become saved by Jesus, and work out other details later on.
Yeah.
That personal contact, I think, the one cup situation, we'll get back to pure evangelism with non-believers in a minute, but since you raised it, Royce, I went to visit after I got to know Clint, which that was an online contact, by the way. That's only the French and I knew each other. And that developed, and I found out he was coming to Chicago. So I volunteered. I'll go to the airport and pick you up. Let's go eat lunch. Let's talk. We already had some online conversations, but that opened the door to personal contact. And that led to me going to the One Cup group when they were meeting on campus and visiting their meetings. And then that led to them coming to our meetings and us going to lunch with a couple that's influential there. Well, then COVID struck, and that wreaked havoc with that group, as well as made evangelism difficult for us at Downers Grove. But the other part of that thing is, I had Clint come to the Joliet discussion, but I drove to Missouri. Not just me asking him to come here, which was a big deal to him. He talks about it in his book that I would say, come and speak to us about what you believe. But I then drove 6 hours to Missouri to go to their lectureship where he and a lot of the other brothers in the One Cup group that he is in fellowship with were. And, you know, we met and talked and had breakfast together. And so I'm just back to, you know, online's a great point of contact, and a lot of things wouldn't happen without that. But man, it has to translate to boots on the ground.
Yeah.
My opinion. That's where the action is.
Yeah, and not just boots on the ground, but nose to nose.
Yes.
You know, ultimately, that's where it's got to go, and that's that's the area that I think it poses the greatest challenge for me. If I can pull off this idea of calling on the name of the Lord, at some point, it's still got to deal with people here locally, and then you begin to wonder: is your approach better done on Zoom? And this is the question I had: is it better done on Zoom or via some Facebook advertising of some sort, and just simply doing what we've always done? If we're talking about a say coffee shop evangelism, just advertising at the meetup.
Yeah, Clint would say Facebook, because he's had a lot of experience, some good results from targeted Facebook ads.
Yes.
Which I want us to try, and haven't done it yet because of everything else that's been going on with me medically. But anyway, for whatever, but I think either way, whatever works in the local situation.
I'd love to hear some. I'd love to hear from some of you. Some of you have had some positive experiences in initial evangelizing. The alien center. Boy, there's an odd term, isn't it? Next time you hear the word alien, it refers to a sinner and not to somebody coming across the border. Some of you had some effect in that regard. I'd love to hear how you facilitated that. But you know, and some of it is the fact, you know, I recognize, you know, I am one of the older guys.
Yes, you are.
So.
Hey Royce, and I'm got a bone to pick with you on. I don't think you're got our age differential correct when you're calling me the old guy.
Weren't you born in July?
No.
When were you born? Why did I have the idea? When were you born?
December of 48. So put your credentials out there, dude.
Oh my heavens.
You are the old guy.
Oh man, I am the old guy. Hey, but I do have a claim to fame. I was born the day Babe Ruth died.
Okay. Well, I was born on Steve Wolfgang's birthday, so there.
There you go. That's all right. All right, somebody else step in here and claim to be older. I wish. Hope. Anybody?
Is it older? Feeling older.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Poor Kyle, he's under me by, I don't know, 10, 12 years, and he's been in poor health for several years. But anyway, Michael, anything that you guys are doing in this respect, online and in any contacts that have developed out of this?
We have tried many things online, Facebook advertising. I have a YouTube channel up and stuff like that. I really haven't had any positive results from that, and I'm disappointed. We've sunk a lot of money and effort into it, but we're going to keep trying because I see the effect in other places.
Right.
We did have a contact about 4 months ago now that converted, and the story is kind of interesting. He's a college student, a friend of a young man that converted 2 years ago, from a contact in a college student, but it was all face-to-face work. It was not Zoom or things like that. And I'm not knocking Zoom. There have been a lot of contacts from our work via Zoom in Bangladesh that have converted. Several Muslim people and Hindu people have converted recently there. But there's somebody on the ground there that has face-to-face contact and is doing the grunt work, you might say. They're doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
I don't think we can stress that enough.
Yeah. That's this is one of the historical discussions that have risen down through the years in our evangelism efforts online, or excuse me, not online. There was a little bit of a brain burp on radio and television.
Okay.
Is our work the type of evangelism that we have done, and the implications of what follow up on that implies, and that ultimately is that there's got to be a nose to nose. Somehow I've got to assist in baptizing you into Christ. How is that facilitated via the broadcasting medium? And that discussion took place over radio, and we've utilized radio effectively down through the years. We've in many places we've utilized television effectively, and of course everybody knows how big Herald of Truth became. But when it all came down to it, those contacts had to ultimately be referred to people in local congregations for the hands-on, nose-to-nose connection. Whatever approach you took, and whatever may be the background that you're coming from in terms of your approval or disapproval of those mediums, Star Bible had that little. Remember, they used to have a little foldable Bible study, like a correspondence class, and had questions on it. I'm trying to remember how Star Bible used to send me stuff like that from especially when I was in Venice, California. There would be people that would make contact, and I don't remember. Did they have a publication? But they had but it's a newsprint, and it had questions on it, and then they folded it, and then you put a stamp on it, and they would mail it back to Star, and Star mailed those to me, and I did follow up on those. I don't have a specific memory of people who were baptized in that connection, but regardless of whatever approach you take, when it is all said and done, wherever that individual is, you got to find somebody's nose to meet them nose to nose and close the deal, so to speak. If nothing else, you got to think about that. So this whole question of doing evangelism online ultimately comes down to who's available to do the follow through.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since I haven't been here, I have to get up earlier now because Tani has to be at work early. So,
yeah, Kevin explained that. Yeah.
Anyhow, who was it that's doing? I'm sorry. Who is it that's doing the fair thingy?
Well, we are, but Perry is right now.
Oh, there, hi Perry.
Perry Hall.
Oh, okay. So I just quick question. What is becoming, at least in my little area here close to home, is people are starting to do these craft fairs kind of things. I don't know.
Oh, they are. Oh, listen, craft fairs are wonderful.
Okay.
Craft fairs are wonderful.
So
yeah,
what I'm thinking is we could just be, because we went to one here the other day, we could just be there as a contact point and try to get people in very local area. They don't drive away from out of the area, but they're very local here. So I'm thinking that might work, something like that.
We had a lady in the church in Refugio, Texas, when we were doing the county fair in Refugio. A lady in the church that did all kinds of crafting. She did toll painting and stuff like that. And they had an area of the fair that focused on crafts. And she would go there and kind of share with some of the ideas that she had, and then invite people down to our booth. And one thing I thought might be an interesting idea would be to get some of our Bible class people to do something similar to that at a county fair in connection with our work, but set some of their Bible class materials out and how they develop. When I never did anything, I never did it, but I thought that was kind of an interesting idea, and it kind of helped the.
My question is that though, if I mean, there are fairs in the area. I mean, there's big fairs, but they're too far away from the local you know, the local work. They're not going to, even if you get a class, they're not going to drive over here to go to church. So I'm thinking something really, really local, like there's one here that's like 4 miles from the house. So that's what I'm thinking is real small, real local might be a way to go.
Yeah. And of course, that's where we were a couple of weeks ago. So anybody else at the online? Not it. Anybody? Nobody?
There.
Well, if nobody else has anything, I've got an idea. I don't know if it's going to work or not. So you guys,
I'm open to ideas.
well, you know how successful our Bible Jeopardy has been in getting people to talk to us. And I was wondering if, since I do have a YouTube channel, maybe doing the Bible Jeopardy on the YouTube channel, where I am obviously the only person, but I would go through each category, then each answer, and then each question, so that people could go to the YouTube channel at any time that they wish and then play the game. I don't know if it'll work or not, but it's just an idea that I've had. And we've also started doing something new with the Bible Jeopardy. Instead of just having topics and then miscellaneous, answers to it. Last week we used Bible Jeopardy to do a verse by verse study of Romans chapter 6. That was interesting. It was hard to do, but I think that's something also worth pursuing. So those are some of the ideas that we're working on here.
Right. Your last experience at the fair, how'd that work out?
The fair, that's been too long ago for me to remember.
Yeah. Did you end up getting any long-term contacts, Bible studies out of that, or anybody that ended up obeying the gospel?
Yeah,
in that
we've had people obey the gospel both out of the fairs and also the coffee house.
Right.
We just started the flea market about a month ago, but I don't know if the devil's trying to get us out of there or not, but we had almost lost our spot 3 or 4 times within the last week or two.
You mean someone trying to muscle you out of it?
I don't know what's going on, but they keep taking our name out of us holding that spot. Even though I paid for the entire month, I got a call saying, "Are you guys interested in keeping this up?" And it's like, "Yeah, I've already paid for it." I believe that the devil works to try to restrict our access. I still believe he's roaming around trying to devour people. He's very, very active.
Right.
So I'm wondering if this is going to be very productive for the Lord's kingdom, to the point where the devil's trying to keep it from happening at all.
Well, I started saying that wouldn't surprise me at all to find out Satan's got his fingers in it and in the hearts of many people. You have an attractive booth there that has some already present and developed benefits that there are some vendors that probably like to take advantage of. It wouldn't surprise me to find somebody trying to work out something underhanded in order to secure it. If you could float the cash to do it, I'd pay for it for a year.
Royce, one positive fallout, I think, from something like that. I mean, we did the fair booth in Danville every year. Up here in Chicago, every little village has what's called a farmer's market in the summer, weekend booths that are set up. They'll block off a city block and no traffic, just foot traffic in there. But whatever comes out of it in terms of just pure evangelism, one of the things that we've used it for, we use our meetup study for this too, is it is a way for Christians who have the guilt feeling that I should be evangelizing, but they don't quite know how to do that. It gives them a kind of I won't say a low threat environment, but we just invite them to come along, and they don't have to talk. They don't have to say anything in meetup. They don't have to do anything at the booth except put more Bibles or tracts out. But it allows them to kind of interface and to see what what actually can happen in an environment like that when somebody stops by and wants to talk. So I think there's a back end benefit to it in that it provides a way, and I'm sure your studies in street evangelism in San Bernardino had probably the same effect. But in addition to the front end loader thing of trying to get new prospects, I think it's a way to create a culture of evangelism, if you will, and to help Christians, say this is not the only way you can do this, but if the impediment is you have not had experience trying to talk to other people about the gospel, here's a first step that you might be able to take. And it didn't work for everybody, but it's a way in the quiver of arrows that we can use. So I'll just throw that out there.
All right. I made a contact several years ago with one of the brethren over in Ontario to see if there was a way we could kind of get our heads together on something with the county fair. But the county fair is, it's so far north of us. It's in excess of 35 miles north of us. And it's the same distance from Ontario. It was not something that he was interested in doing, and I wasn't really interested in doing on my own. Although apparently none of the churches up in the Victorville, Hesperia area are doing anything like that. At one time, the church in Montclair was working the Los Angeles County Fair over at Pomona. I think it was Montclair. Dean, do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that. It probably was.
I think that was at the time Bob Dodson was there.
Would that would be Fort Carp? No, that wouldn't be Fort Carp. I don't know, but it's closer.
Yeah, it's significantly closer. It's significantly closer. Where's the county fair in Riverside? At Riverside?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't go.
Yeah, well,
I do have a question here.
But you may have an opportunity there.
Yeah, there's a group of people that I'm working with. They have developed actually a slideshow using the Lego Bible. Okay, using the Lego Bible and these little characters, and they have it developed. I'm thinking, is there any way to schedule, just invite people on a card or something, that there will be a presentation online, and so it's kind of like Zoom, but it goes through this presentation, but hand out cards in which they could sign up. They could sign up for the meeting or something like that. In other words, a Tuesday at 7:30 in the evening, there's going to be a presentation, and you can dial in at that time or something like that.
Is there any way to advertise it?
Well, yeah,
how many ways do you say there are? About 10 million ways to advertise it?
Well,
yeah.
What I'm thinking is if there were individual cards, individual invitation cards, it's kind of like that big picture concept where you're inviting people personally. Like, for instance, I invited my ophthalmologist. I talked to him when I was up there having whatever he's doing, and he said sure, he'd be interested, but I haven't followed through because I don't have the technology to follow through. But he indicated an interest. Yeah, I'll be glad to come and participate.
Yeah, that's where Facebook advertising comes in, because you can target it.
Okay.
Facebook advertising is a great way to do that, and we do that every year when we're in our evangelism. We have we do Facebook ads for that, telling that we're at Cal State San Bernardino or something like that.
Okay.
So the answer to the question is, yeah, that you can advertise it. Getting people online. Then the discussion becomes, how do you personalize that presentation in such a way? This comes right back to where Steve was earlier. How do you personalize that to where you've got the nose-to-nose contact that you've got to have in order to bring someone into obedience to the gospel? Now you're left with that. So somewhere along the way, you've got to set you've got to set up that process, think that through in such a way that you can take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
so
Have to work on that.
yeah. Well, all right. Anybody else got an idea you want to run past us?
I just got a quick question and a thought. I haven't tried it, so I just wonder what your thoughts are when talking about the electronic medium. What if you looked and found an already existing Bible study, maybe non-denominational, and you joined them with the purpose of of hopefully maybe leading them in the direction of the truth. Anybody ever tried? I wonder what that would be like.
That's a golden opportunity.
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to say, man, there's one made for you.
Yeah.
I did it with the Jehovah's Witnesses till they threw me out.
Yeah. We had a group that came into the coffee house and he was still meeting there and started up, like 2 tables over, started up a Bible study. And that particular night when they first started, we had a full house. I mean, we had like 12 people at the table, which is too much really in some ways.
Yeah, that's right.
I get up and I say, I'm going to go over this other group. So I went over and sat down with this little 3 or 4 person group that were Presbyterians and said, can I join you? And they're like, maybe like how we do, something like that. They're a little suspicious looking around for, who is this guy? But I sat down and mostly just listened.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'd say, have you looked at this verse? Or let's have a look at this text or something. And they came back the next week, but man, they were gone pretty quickly. But
I get this Robert Turner image in my mind of this guy that walks up to our Presbyterian group and says, "Can I join you?" And then what does he do? Sits right down there in the middle of the ant bed, Of course, you'd have to know that poem that Turner wrote years ago in order to appreciate that.
And no Turner.
Yeah, and no Turner. That's right. Yeah. Something was,
I'll be back in a minute.
Oh, go ahead. Go do what you got to do. Something was said just a second ago. I was gonna. I remember what it was. That's exactly what Ethan Longhenry did with the Bible Club at UCLA. He went in and had several of their people started meeting with the Bible Club at UCLA. Next thing you know, they needed a change of individuals to run the thing, and either Ethan began to run that or whatever, and that ended up being a real teaching opportunity at UCLA. I think he's done the same thing at West LA College also. And so that's Ethan's been very effective in doing that. He has his own way of teaching. I think he calls it, the Vine. He has a program or a Bible study that he wrote that's called The Vine, that he does in connection with the Bible Club. Now, we were trying to do the same thing here, but that group was infiltrated by some oneness Pentecostals. And you'd go to they really ruined that the Bible Club, or it was called Christian Club at San Bernardino Valley College. They really ruined that because it ended up being a gathering of old people of oneness Pentecostal views and only 1 or 2 students. And that they just essentially ruined it. So you'd have a Bible Club meeting and there might be 15, 20 people there, but only 1 or 2 students. And I'm certain that that's not what the college was interested in. Now, they were still doing it last time I heard, which would have been a few months ago. So I'm not sure the college ever intervened on it, but that would be something I think if we're going to do something like that, you're going to take advantage of that. You really need to be sure you've got some young people there. You can't let it become a group of young people at the college, and then you old folks come in and take over and turn it into a typical old folks Bible study. Ethan's still young enough, and he had a number of other members of the church there who got involved to help keep that thing going. So are any of you doing any campus work like that through a Bible club, a Christian club, any of the groups like that? Anybody doing anything like that?
No, we have a Tuesday Bible study, but we haven't really invited anyone. And I began to wonder why. We probably should put it out to the public, because we certainly did that in the coffee shop. That was our point in the coffee shop, was hopefully to draw in some. But we don't have very many meetings with us on Zoom on Tuesday, but we haven't advertised it.
Right.
Like Perry.
That's interesting. That's at the college?
Yes, with our college students.
Holy Toledo. Wow.
Yeah,
Why don't you use Facebook advertising on that? That's perfect for some targeted Facebook ads.
I don't know why I hadn't thought about it. But
that's perfect. Those of you who've been here and have worked with us know that we've used Facebook advertising to say we're going to be at the Starbucks at certain times, and that's been reasonably effective in getting people there. So Facebook advertising is really good because it can target. Their whole business model is about targeting, especially at the local basis. So Facebook is, very valuable in that regard. We've done that down through the years. You've already heard Steve mention that Clinton had done it. I'd be interested in talking to Clinton as to exactly what he did. I wonder if it parallels the type of thing that we were doing. And we were targeting that. I'm trying to remember what we did with that. I think we targeted that at 18 to 35. I think we specified 18 to 35, which would leave me out of the list, but that's not the point, because I'm going to be there teaching it or involved in it at some level. Anybody else got anything they want to mention? Clinton, as I mentioned, Clinton asked me a question about facilitating a meeting dealing with bilingual work. And I sent a note back and I said, we live in northern Mexico, so every time we're out, we have to try at some point to make it bilingual. He's about to start a trilingual study of some sort. I'm interested in what he's doing there and how that would come about, as to whether it would just simply be a matter of confusion or not. And hopefully not. But I'm interested in seeing how he wants to do that. So I'm going to put planning and implementing a bilingual program. I'm going to do that online anyway. If you've been out here, we've had Carlos Zapata has been a part of it. When George came, he brought Brother Garcia with him, who was a great co-worker, and would love to see him come again. So anything else anybody wants to say before we call a halt to this?
It's not study exactly, but Embry Hills in Atlanta, where my daughter's a member. One Sunday night, of course, they have a Spanish-speaking church that meets in the building on Sunday afternoons, like a lot of other places. I know Indianapolis does that, and some other places I know of. But they, one Sunday night a month, do a bilingual sermon.
Right.
Where one of the Hispanic-speaking guys will either translate on the spot, or the main guy will. They have 2 or 3 evangelists there, but whoever's speaking as the main guy will preach in Spanish, even though most of the audience is English speaking, and somebody else will translate that. So it's an attempt to try to integrate. And I don't know that this was killed by COVID, of course. But I don't know how effectively. They'd only been doing it for a few months before COVID struck.
Right.
But, and, you know, frankly, in some of the places that I'm familiar with, it's like, you know, African-American churches, they're just like, understandably so, at least in the Chicago area, pox on the white churches because of the whole, you know, 60s and prior, the whole, you know, segregation thing. They'd rather remain apart.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you, the church that is predominantly black here in town, they never missed a service. They never stopped meeting. They never did any real social separation. They've continued to do their work, and they didn't let what the governor said or what county officials said. They've just continued to meet. They have had a number of people who've ended up with COVID, but we ended up with 3 families who had to deal with it ourselves. Yeah, they certainly didn't get it there, and I haven't heard of any deaths. I did hear of one person over there that died, but I don't know if it was from COVID. But we've had a cordial relationship. But the fact that all the time that I've been affiliated with this church, we've been an integrated church with minority oversight also. So that's not been an issue for us. So. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for coming. And I'll be good to see you, Steve. Don't get to see you. Are you coming back out here for anything anytime soon?
I'm not officially, no, I don't have any scheduled. I'm not officially cleared to travel till I see the surgeon again. But this date in April that I described for New York is several weeks beyond that. So I'm presuming I'm going to get clearance to go. And the state of Illinois will have to do with me whatever they want to.
Right. What week in April are you going to be there?
It's like the 20. It's the Exton 2-day study. It's a gathering for preachers from all over New England, all over the Northeast.
Okay.
At Exton, which is Philadelphia suburbs, but because Joe Works has bought this former convent up in Elmira, New York, so it's at Elmira this year. So it's still the ETDS. It's the Elmira 2-day study now, and it draws guys from. I mean, the guys come from Chicago. It's a kind of an East Coast thing, but that's like April 20th, 21st, 19th, and 20th. I don't know. I'm just going to get in the van and ride. So
right.
I'm doing. They asked me to. Everybody else is speaking on Ephesians. They've got like 6 or 8 guys that are assigned over. Monday and Tuesday, all day Monday, all day Tuesday to speak on Ephesians. They got one guy that's supposed to unpack Colossians, one slot for the whole book of Colossians in an hour. Guess who got that straw?
You got to be kidding! Really? You get one shot on Colossians? I spent one shot on Colossians 2:12 for crying out loud.
Yeah. Well, Jeff Smelser, did this commentary on Ephesians, and he's like, you wanting to highlight the differences. And I'm like, that's great, but, give me more than an hour for crying out loud.
Yeah. Wow. There's no way.
It's like I told the FC people when they asked me to come do my instrumental music thing. I said, Harding asked me, and Harding gave me 3 hours, not just one. Let's get real here.
That's right. Yeah.
So Steve, is that invitation only, or can?
No, it's come if you can. Absolutely, okay. It's open to everybody. So come up, brother.
What do they call it?
It was the Exton 2-day study, and I guess they're still. Everybody knows it as the ETDS.
Yes.
But it's now the Elmira 2-day study because everybody's going to live on campus and bunk in the one of the dorms that the convent sisters used to live in, and Joe lives on the site and the church meets on the site. It's actually an intriguing idea. This convent went out of business, and evidently were trying to get rid of their property for dirt cheap, and Joe bought it. And I think they do the FC camp up there on campus.
Right.
So it's an interesting concept. I've not been there yet. My daughter goes up for. There's a a marathon up there that she says is the only flat marathon in the U.S. So they go up every year to run the marathon. But
Right.
it'll be interesting. Yeah, Perry, come up. Absolutely.
April 21st and the 22nd.
Yeah, whatever. It's the Monday and Tuesday after tax day. So 19th and 20th, maybe something like that.
Oh, so it's 19th and 20th. Okay.
I think so. Yeah, it starts Monday at noon and goes till Tuesday at like 6 o'clock. And
Yeah,
it's
except
tightly
Tax
packed.
day's in May now.
Sorry.
Tax day is in May now.
Oh yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah. All right. Good to be with you guys.
See ya.
Yeah, you guys be safe. Good to see you guys. I'm gonna keep this thing. Perry, if you want to kill that, that's fine. I'm gonna
Okay.
keep it up for just a second. I'm gonna talk to Carl for just a minute here.
Okay.
But
Stop
you go ahead and kill
recording.
that. You go ahead and kill